This is the story about the mines and town of Rhyolite, Nevada. This old town is just a few miles away from present-day Beatty. It was in the month of August, way back in 1904, that two prospectors, Frank Harris and Ernest Cross, found gold in the hills of an area known as the Bullfrog District. It was this find of high-grade ores that started a stampede. The town of Rhyolite was a result of this stampede, and this area saw thousands of prospectors, miners, and merchants rush to this camp. These ore samples from the site suggested values up to $3,000 a ton, which would be around $100,000 a ton in today's dollars when adjusted for inflation. There were a few other camps that set up in the area with news of these finds. Towns like Blair and Silver Peak got their start during this time. However, it was Rhyolite that took the center stage and became the big grand town. Now, I want you to just stop here for a moment and make you aware of some timelines and ponder what you're going to hear. Remember now, this town started out as just a two-tent camp in January 1905, and within 2 weeks there were 1,200 people, and by June that same year, there was a population of 2,500. By that time, there were 50 saloons, 35 gambling joints, 19 boarding houses, 16 restaurants, a couple of barber shops, a public bathhouse, and of course, numerous brothels. Then, within another 2 years, this town already had concrete sidewalks, running water, telephone and telegraph lines, electric lights, a couple of newspapers, police and fire departments, a hospital, a school, a train station, 3 banks, an opera house, a public swimming pool, and 2 churches. Now, this is hard to imagine, but believe it or not, Rhyolite even had its own stock exchange building. This exchange building housed the Rhyolite Mining Stock Exchange, which opened on March 25, 1907, with 125 members, and had brokers from New York, Philadelphia, and a few other cities. Another building in particular was the John S. Cook & Company Bank Building, which cost more than $90,000 at the time. That would be equivalent to around $3 million today. Much of this expense was spent on lavish things like the Italian marble stairs, the fancy stained glass windows, and lots of other luxuries. By this time, the population was somewhere between 5,000 and 7,000 people, depending on different sources. Imagine all this being built in less than 4 years' time. Something of this scale would never happen today. After 3 or 4 years, we'd still be doing studies, risk analysis, and waiting on permits. So, what really caused this boom to begin with anyways? Well, it was the Montgomery Shoshone Mine that got the real rush started. In February of 1905, miners pulled ore out of the ground that assayed as high as $16,000 a ton. That would be equivalent to over $500,000 a ton in today's money. I'm still trying to wrap my head around this number. Anyways, this mine was started by a fellow by the name of Ernest Montgomery. He didn't own the mine very long because with the high grades of ore like they were getting, it didn't take long for big money to come into town, and so in 1906 he sold the mine to a big-time money man by the name of Charles Schwab. Remember those old TV commercials? When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen? Well, back in those days it was this. Wherever Charles Schwab went, people followed, so raising additional cash was never a problem. It's been rumored that Charles paid a couple $1 million for the mine. That would have been a pile of money back then. First thing Charles did was expand the operation by hiring more workers, opening new tunnels and drifts, and building a huge mill to process the ore. He had water piped in, ran 100 miles of power lines from a hydroelectric plant in the Sierra Nevada mountains, and then had the Las Vegas and Tonopah Railroad build a rail line to the mine. Eventually, there were 3 railroads that served the town of Rhyolite. The rail connection at Rhyolite served to move goods into the remote region that helped build new mines and districts like Skidoo and the Keene Wonder Mine. If you're interested in seeing videos on either of those mines, I've left links in the description box below and also pinned in the comments. Now, while all this was going on, behind the scenes there was trouble brewing. First of all, there was that big earthquake in San Francisco in 1906, and some of the investors were from that area and needed money to rebuild. Then there was that panic of 1907. This financial crisis, which was caused from some bad banking decisions, saw people taking their money out of the banks. This also led to people selling their stock in mining companies from lack of trust, and as the stock prices fell, the more the selling occurred. Even though the mine was profitable, by 1909, no new ore was being discovered, and this led to the value of the remaining ore steadily decreasing. And in 1910, the mine operated at a loss for most of the year, and in March of 1911, the mine closed. Similar results were the same from other mines in the district. The high-grade ores that made the Bullfrog District famous turned out to be in narrow veins that just petered out. The lower-grade ore was not profitable to mine in those days, and many mines closed. It was at this time that the writing was on the wall, that the town of Rhyolite was destined to be a ghost town. The post office closed in November 1913, the last train left town in July 1914, and the power company turned off the electricity and removed its lines in 1916. Over time, a lot of buildings were moved to places like Beatty just a few miles away, and other buildings were scavenged for any valuables. You can still drive out to the old town site today. A lot of the old stone buildings are still standing. Buildings like the John Cook Bank and the train station are still there. I hope you enjoyed this short story about the town of Rhyolite. Please like, share, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you more old, lost mine stories.